All right, so for starters, homeownership is becoming unaffordable. 86% of US renters feel they can't afford a home, and 54% think it's unlikely they'll ever buy a home. This chart shows the median income in Wisconsin versus the income needed to afford the median home. And you can see there was a 32% increase in median income from 2018 to 2024, and a 95% increase in income needed to afford the median home over the same period. Additionally, home buying is extremely stressful. This chart shows how home buyers relate the stress of buying a home to other stressful life events. Notably, almost half said buying a home is more stressful than getting a divorce. So in summary, housing is becoming less affordable. Data is complex and fragmented, which increases stress for home buyers. And so the solution is to create a centralized interactive dashboard. This will allow people to access housing affordability data, get home recommendations, and assess their budget and costs all in one place. So starting out, to empathize, I observed prospective homebuyers on online forums. I found there were lots of financial questions and many people asking if the price they were offering was fair or too high. To engage, I talked with friends and colleagues who are at stages in their lives where they might consider buying a home. Their primary concerns were about the real estate market and that prices and interest rates are too high. Finally, to immerse, I spent time using home search apps like Zillow and Realtor.com. I found that information is fragmented and you need to already have a price range in mind. So then I separated my findings into needs and insights. I consider these needs the fact that you need to know your price, that information is fragmented, and questions about prices and interest rates being fair. I considered these findings insights, that home prices and interest rates are too high, that people think renting might be better, and that there's uncertainty about financing. So to define the problem, users are stressed and uncertain about the housing market and have varying levels of financial literacy. Information and data is currently complex and fragmented, so there's a need for a centralized place to access housing data. This would allow users to analyze housing trends and market data, assess their budget and financing, and receive personalized home recommendations to narrow their search. So to start the ideation process, I organized feedback and my own thoughts into focus and flare categories. Focus elements get at the core of the app, like how can statistical insights be presented to a lay audience and what tools can be provided. Flare statements are broader and include things like addressing emotional challenges, connecting borrowers to lenders, incorporating crime data, and incorporating results from previous users. So to start prototyping, I sketched out my vision for the homepage with different widgets and filters. I asked users for feedback and how they would rearrange things or add things to the page and got some great feedback. I also did user-driven prototyping where I asked users to sketch how they would want a home listings page to look and followed up with questions like what kind of information would you want to see and where would you want it to go on the page. Taking user feedback into account, I came up with a prototype for the app shown here. So the 3 different tabs that I planned. And so with the prototype in place, data is needed to make everything possible. So I'll briefly touch on the data sources. The first data source I used is the loan application register. The Home Mortgage Disclosure Act requires lenders to report data on mortgages. This data set includes data like the county and the tract of the mortgage applications, the interest rate, property value, lender, whether approved or denied, and borrower characteristics like income, age, and debt to income ratio. The second data source I use is the census. This provides data on median income by year for tracts, counties, and the state. And finally, I couldn't find a way to scrape Zillow or anything without getting flagged as a bot, so I decided to simulate listings for now. I used the Wisconsin Department of Revenue real estate transfer data, which has data on real estate transactions. So it's actual home sales, just not current listings. But this data set has the address and then latitude and longitude, which I used the census geocoder to get. how much the property sold for, and then I generated simulated information like the number of beds, baths, and the square footage. So after developing a bare bones version of the app, I did some user testing and generated a feedback capture grid. Things that users liked it or found noteworthy were the map feature. They liked exploring the data table and generally found the first tab very informative. In terms of constructive criticism, I got some feedback on layout and formatting. Also, some feedback was very valuable, like the fact it wasn't obvious you first had to select a county before you could select a tract. Some questions that were raised were, can you zoom in on the map? What is the affordability index? What is age on the recommendations tab? And what is affordability relative to? These questions were super valuable and led me to add some card footers in the app with detail and explanations. Finally, some new ideas that were presented were to take property tax and insurance into account on the mortgage calculator, and then possibly integrating some other data sources. Okay, so let's get into the app. The first tab here presents data on affordability. On the left here is a map of Wisconsin showing affordability by county. Affordability is just the area's median income divided by median property value. More affordable areas are darker blue, and the color scheme was based on user feedback because I originally had it green and red, but got some constructive criticism on how ugly it was and was recommended a blue scale. On the right is a chart showing Wisconsin median income over time and the income needed to afford the median home. And that's based on income needed to spend 33% or less of gross income on a mortgage payment for the median home price in that year. Some of the formatting of this chart is based on user feedback, like the legend and the tick labels in currency format. And the drop down here that says select county to view tracts was also based on user feedback because previously it wasn't clear that you couldn't select a tract without selecting a county first. And then also the footers here are based on user feedback because during testing some questions were raised about what the charts are showing. So these offer some explanations. And finally down here is a data table just showing all the data in tabular format. I was going to actually get rid of this table because I felt like it was just taking up space, but in testings, users liked it and were clicking through it, and so I decided to keep it. And then going into the interactivity, the user can choose to map different variables, so they could look at median income, which will update the map, and then median value, median home value, which will also change the map. And then, so we'll go back to affordability. Users can also look at a specific county. So we'll do Milwaukee as an example. And this will zoom the map in on Milwaukee County and show affordability by tract now. And this chart on the right will also update and show the median income and income needed for just Milwaukee County. And with the county selected, then you can drill into specific tracts and see the trends at a more granular level. And then the table down here also changes to displaying the data by tract instead of by county. So now we'll go to the recommendations tab, and the map will load here and remember the county that you were looking at from the first tab, and now it will show house listings which are simulated. And on the left here, the user can put in their information. So we're looking in Milwaukee County for a 30-year mortgage, and then we'll change, say, the annual income to 50,000. Can change the age, say you're 40, and say that you plan on putting a 30% down payment. And so this will update the listings, and what it's doing is looking at the loan application register data and finding similar borrowers based on these characteristics that were approved for mortgages. And then it takes the interquartile range of the property values they were approved for and recommends that range. So for these settings, it's 255,000 to 355,000 that's recommended. And down here, you can also see approval rate for similar borrowers, the recommended price range, and the average interest rate. So this is based on data for 63 borrowers that had the same characteristics. And users can also, if they want, manually adjust the price range. So say they want more of an expensive house, we'll put it in that range there. And then you can see this will load as it goes through, and you can see the approval rate for a more expensive house drops to 87%. And then down here are just some house filters like beds, baths, and square feet. This was something I added based on user feedback because I was asking what kind of filters do you want? Would you want for searching for a home, and what would you kind of expect the filters to look like? And so, say you want more beds, you can slide that, and it will filter out any houses that have less than that number of beds. And then finally, if you actually just click a listing, it'll pull up a street view of the house, and it'll show the address, the price, and the number of beds, baths, and the square footage. And then you can use this control here to take a look around in the street view, which I think is a pretty cool feature. And then finally down here is recommended lenders. So this is sorted based on approval rate for similar borrowers, but you can also see average interest rate and how many similar borrowers applied to that lender. So finally, if we go over to the mortgage calculator tab, this information on the left here is all remembered from the previous tab. This was based on user feedback because people didn't want to have to enter the same information twice, which makes sense. And so right here in the upper left is a payment breakdown. It'll show the components going into the monthly and total mortgage payment. And so in this scenario, the base payment, taxes, HOA, home insurance, and other costs would add up to a $3,129 monthly mortgage payment. And then this gauge here shows how affordable that payment is based on your income. So we can see with a $50,000 annual income, this is not at all affordable. So if we say lower the home price to 200,000, you can see now it's more affordable, taking up 37% of your monthly income goes to the mortgage payment. And let's say we put a higher down payment and put 50% down, then it's definitely affordable, taking only 31% of your gross income. And all these inputs over here you can change to update the payment breakdown and the affordability gauge. So you can change, say, interest rate, tax rate, say you don't have that many other costs. That will all change the payment breakdown and the gauge here. Lastly, this chart down here shows the mortgage amortization. So you can see since we're putting 50% down on a $200,000 house, the loan starts at 100,000, and then starting out you're paying mostly interest, which is shown in light blue here. But as you make more payments, you pay more and more principal, and the loan balance starts declining more rapidly until you're at zero. And so, yeah, that's basically the functionality of the app. It's made so people can explore housing affordability trends, get some recommendations for homes to look into, and understand their budget and what's affordable for them and what isn't. So, in terms of alternative approaches and things I could implement in the future, the first is additional data layers. Some ideas I got during prototyping were adding crime data and school district data because those factors are important to home buyers. So adding these elements would definitely be beneficial. I also kind of want to switch to leaflet instead of just the shapefiles because the leaflet maps look way better in my opinion. And then another idea I was provided and didn't implement yet is a scrollable grid of homes, like the ones on other home search sites. And then finally, just optimizing the code so it runs faster, and really taking a closer look at what parts of the code are running when and optimizing the reactivity. So, in conclusion, this app supports decision making because it helps users find affordable areas to buy a home in, find potential homes to buy, and understand their budget and what's affordable for them. It also arms home buyers with data to make their home search easier. They can see similar borrowers and what approval rates they're getting, what lenders they're going to, and what their interest rates are like, and what home price range they're buying. Also, being able to see prices for similar homes is useful so they can be more confident in offer prices. And finally, knowing what's affordable and what isn't is just very valuable information for home buyers to have. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.